social distance-y, even though things are
Some
opening
places,
back up.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah. Yeah. Amy and Samir here. It is Wednesday, March 17th, of course. Yeah. How's your St. Patrick's Day going, Samir?
Oh, I haven't ordered anything green to eat yet, but maybe that's coming in the evening.
I'm eating some, I'm sure not authentic Irish soda bread that I bought at the store. We were just discussing that I was surprised that it was sweet. I don't know how authentic that is, that it's sweet. I've made Irish soda bread once before, and it was definitely not sweet.
Hi, Crystal. That you're correct, Amy. It's not supposed to be sweet. There's like a sweetness from like the wheat or the flour sometimes that's natural in something, but it's not supposed to be like taste like a sweet.
This has straight up like sugar crystals and raisins in it.
That sounds amazing, though.
It's really good.
Have
I'm
that.
glad I bought it. Yeah, and it's
with
a nice,
my tea.
like, hearty thing. Yeah, it's pairing very nicely with my Irish breakfast tea that I'm having.
Irish breakfast tea. What makes it Irish breakfast tea?
I don't know. It tastes
as opposed to English breakfast.
It does taste a little bit different from English breakfast tea, but I don't know. And later tonight, I will be having some Irish coffees, which I'm sure also isn't authentic, considering those were invented in San Francisco.
Nice.
And then I think my family's making a vegetarian shepherd's pie. So that's going to be
there you go. And look, you have a new fan or another fan joining. Kim, hello, Kim, and well.
Hi, Kim.
Top of the afternoon to you, Crystal.
Thank you very much.
Cute. But yes, it's been
English muffins. I don't know. I mean,
I don't know. We know whenever this day comes around every year, and I'm like, this is always the day I'm like, oh, you know what? I should look up some Irish recipes. And I'm like, Irish recipes are pretty much just like a lot of other recipes. It's like, here's a stew. And here's some meat. Like corned beef is not like, my rib was not like a traditional Irish dish. It was like a dish that was like popularized in the US by Irish immigrants or something to that effect. So that
could they afford beef? I mean, you think of all the things that like the poor people of Ireland have gone through. It's like, I think there's a reason why the potatoes were so popular. Like it was.
So there's not like, there's some things, but like soda bread is like supposed to be a really simple, quick bread, that you can make easily. You just have to shape it and treat it right. There was the little Irish place in San Francisco that I used to go to that had amazing soda bread. It was like exactly the way it should taste. And it was like a proper breakfast plate with some of the things that, we do not consider breakfast items in the US. And sometimes like black pudding and things like that. But I almost every time I'm like, okay, there's not that much. Like I will have all these ingredients in my fridge, most likely. But then you try to go buy like a whole Irish meal from like someplace, and then they're like, it's an insane expensive thing. I'm like, no, the whole point is that these are supposed to be affordable things to feed a family with. So I don't think corned beef and potatoes is supposed to be $97 for, to feed 5 people. I think that's tad excessive.
Yeah, I was looking up, I found something that was like 60 Irish recipes. I was like, cool. And the first 10 were like various forms of corned beef, of just like, this is a corned beef brisket, this is corned beef and cabbage, this is there, and then it was getting to the point it's like, okay, this is clearly not authentic. There was
this is just people making stuff up.
Corned beef nachos.
Corned beef, that's just revolting and insulting. I would never. No, you don't eat corned beef on nachos. But that is one thing I might get today, Luke. I might actually order a shamrock shake.
We'll see how authentic is that.
It's not. It's just a mint flavored shake that you can, it's one of the few times you can get a shake flavored with mint. that you can order from a main, like a fast food or a nationwide chain. So I take advantage of the alternative flavor options for milkshakes when they come around. And this time of year, you can always guarantee they're going to have to do something green, and the only palatable flavor they can do is like mint with the green. So that's what we get. I'm usually pretty happy about that, and then you can like mix it with a chocolate shake to make it extra delicious, but kills the green color of it. But
well,
nonetheless, I'm glad that we've devoted time to Irish films this week, because it's going to be interesting to talk about the movie we watched last night, because I did some reading on it too, and I actually really, really liked the film. I thought it was a great movie.
So we will be talking about Saoirse Ronan today for our Woman Crush Wednesday during Irish Week. But yesterday for Director Tuesday, for Director Tuesday, we talked about Jim Sheridan, who is Irish, and many of his films discuss Irish struggles, including this film, In the Name of the Father. This came out, I think this was 93. This was his third film. Nominated for a bunch of Oscars, and loosely based on actual events. I know one of the main things that didn't happen was that this main character, he and his father did not share a jail cell. I don't even know if they were in the same prison.
They were in the same. I don't remember they were. No, I think you're right. They may not have been in the same prison because their correspondence was by letters. Yeah. And so, for the purpose of the film, they put them in the same cell so that they could condense,
because that's more visually stimulating than like, okay, we're just gonna watch them write letters the whole time. I get that.
Yeah. And then one of the other things I read was people got really upset about the how all the lawyers who worked on behalf of like the Guildford Four and then the group of 7 that were all convicted of, wrongly convicted of these crimes. That there was actually a team of lawyers, and that it's condensed into one character, and like it's really unfair. I know that everyone knows that there's no way that one lawyer would have gone. They obviously, people had issues with the courtroom scene because a courtroom scene wouldn't have worked like that, and so people were like, they just did this for the movies, and I'm like, well, they're also trying to get a point across to people. So I think the point is that they're supposed to understand that something was argued successfully in court, and it was a triumphant moment for these people, which I think the scene accomplishes. The vagaries of this, the specificity of how a British courtroom works, I don't think was like totally germane to the dramatic intention of the film. So I can understand things like that. Also, the fact people like really upset about the lawyer being one person. I'm like, okay, there's only 30 minutes left of the movie. How many lawyer characters do you think you can pack into a story to make it like perfectly represent the fact on a page? It kind of brought me back to the Werner Herzog belief in there's the accountant's truth, and then there's the truth that really matters, in a film. Like, and I feel like that, this movie is not concerned with the accountant's truth. It's concerned with like, it's more of a picture of these particular characters going through this, and it's a relationship between the father and the son. It's really at the center of the story as well.
Yes, and Owen.
See, it's not a documentary. If it was a documentary and they changed all these things and told us this is the facts, these are the straight facts of this, like, then I think there would be cause for uproar over it. But I don't think the film misrepresented like the conflict or the effect of the conflict on real people in Ireland and England.
It reminded me a little bit of The Hurricane, which we watched in February, just another, true story of false imprisonment. And, a lot of people had trouble with that too, as far as like, this never happened to him, and he wasn't molested as a child. And it's the same thing. It's like, okay, well, it's a movie.
Like the main point of the story is this. Do you agree that the movie is telling that larger story?
Yes.
And I think that this movie does accomplish that. So you can understand instantly when you're watching this movie, you see why Daniel Day-Lewis is like his performance is just amazing in this movie.
It was
like, it felt so real to me. Every emotion he played, like when he's like sort of losing it mentally, like nothing felt overplayed. It felt really like he really lived it and meant it. So sometimes those the extra work other people have to do to bring a method actor into their role can pay off. Because I think it really did with him, and of course that the relationship with his dad. Like the only other movie that I have a vivid memory of with Pete Postlethwaite in is a movie where he plays an alcoholic, abusive father, like who terrorizes his family. So I'm like, okay, that's called that one's called Distant Voices Still Lives. It's directed by Terrence Davies. It was made in the late 80s.
I haven't heard of that one.
And so I have, and that's a brilliant film, and he gives an amazing performance. So it was like crazy to see him as another father character, but this time it's like your heart just breaks for him in this movie so much.
Yeah, I've seen him in quite a few things that I really like. Like him in The Town, which was one of his last roles, same with Inception. And of course,
look, Walter Murray said the same thing.
Yeah, him being in him in Romeo and Juliet, him being, I think, the only actor in there who was actually speaking in iambic pentameter with Shakespearean speech. Yeah, he was great in this. And I think there was something I read that he is only like 11 months older than Daniel Day-Lewis or some crazy thing.
I think that might be right.
Yeah, but then
because I remember what he looked like in the so also another movie that I wish more people remember Daniel Day-Lewis for is a film called My Beautiful Laundrette that was made in the mid to late 80s, where he plays a gay like fascist punk and he's in love with a Pakistani man in England, and it's about their relationship. And I remember that movie being so powerful because it's the first time I saw like a beautiful brown-skinned man in a gay relationship in a movie, like, and it was like treated like, like this is a beautiful thing, this relationship. So that was really powerful for me there. And he was so good in that movie. And around, I think a year after or the same year is when Pete Postlethwaite was playing that alcoholic, abusive dad. And they look the same, almost the same age, like, pretty close in age at that time. So when you see this movie and it's like, oh, they really emphasize the lines in his face with his makeup, and like they did a really good job to age them, and it felt natural. It didn't feel like, because sometimes you get those movies where it's like, here's them young and it's like,
yeah,
and then here's them old
Irishman.
It's so this one I bought it all the way through, even though they're condensing 15 years into 2 hours. I somehow did not feel like I'm like, oh, they made such a huge jump. What happened in all this time? I felt carried along really well all the way through.
Yeah, and I definitely, it was interesting for me, again, we talked a little bit about how in the US, at least, everything with the IRA wasn't exactly something that we learned in depth about in school. And it was definitely interesting to see a little glimpse of, people even in England, it's like they're racist against people who are Irish just because of what's going on. And then just automatically assuming like, oh, you're Irish. And that happened a little bit in Breakfast on Pluto too, which took place during the same time era initially, where it's like, oh, you're the Irish person, so you must have planted this bomb.
Yes. Obviously, that's something I knew about, seen some of these other types of films about these subjects in the past, but it's interesting. I never watched this movie back when, and this is like, when I was a teenager, this movie was nominated for all these Oscars. For some reason, my parents just didn't make it a priority to watch this film, even though my mother talks about our Scotch-Irish heritage a lot, but Scottish and Irish. I hate saying Scotch-Irish. It's weird. But
I'm mostly Scotch.
But this was a movie that never made it into our lives somehow. But I always sort of understood the conflict. When you look at a map and it still has Northern Ireland as part of the UK, and then the rest of Ireland is its own country. You're like, well, wait a minute, how does that work? And then I was an encyclopedia reader as a kid. What can I say? So I was curious, but it's just a shame that I never watched this movie before. It's just shocking to me because it was so good. And I do remember a lot of buzz at the Oscars about it, because you heard the name of it a few times in big awards and never.
Yeah, I
I
think it
don't
was
remember it
nominated for
winning.
like 7 Oscars. I don't think it won anything.
Yeah, it didn't win anything. I kept hearing the name, and I'm
Three
like,
acting
okay, I
awards:
guess.
Best Picture, Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, I think. Oh,
Yeah, it's
nothing.
adapted from Jerry Conlon's book, actually,
Mhm.
which was I can't. I wish I had had more time to read up what Jerry Conlon's perspective on the film was, because I'm sure they feel like there's a lot of things that maybe they wanted included or things that they
Yeah,
thought they
again,
feel
I
misrepresent something.
I read that he kind of distanced himself from this movie, just because it was
Yeah,
so different from his book and the actual experience. But so that's unfortunate. um,
it is, but you can also understand that it was his life. So it's like when it's your life, like, do you want to see somebody pulling a story that they see in that story and amplifying that instead of amplifying these other things that
mhm.
are really vital to the core of who you are now because of those experiences. So that is to be expected, I think, with a story like this, because this is a tough subject to represent on screen, because you're really kind of always teaching most of the world, teaching the audience about the subject in a way.
Mhm.
Like, if you're not teaching them something, then it's like they don't engage with the movie, because that this knowledge, like you said, is not taught anywhere in any great significance. It's like it's a footnote, it's a paragraph, it's very little is ever spent on it, because, well, we grew up in the U.S. and it's not the United States, so obviously don't really preference that. And when you study world history, that's same thing there. It's just
Yeah.
a small section in a larger conversation about mostly other countries. But
Yeah.
I'm appreciating these comments that some people are talking about experiences from their family during the time of the IRA's most violent activities.
Yeah,
Because
we also highly recommend Hunger with Michael Fassbender.
yes, that is a great movie as well.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, he got it. Owen's got it down there. But yeah, these stories, I'm like, these are the kind of stories that people like grew up with. It's so you're also seeing a movie that comes out of the experience of people who grew up experiencing these things. And I think for a lot of people, I think a lot of people outside of Ireland maybe had a hard time dividing the IRA from the rest of Ireland.
Mhm.
So they sort of conflated everything in one. So everyone, all these other um, stereotypes sort of got worked in, and then that made it even easier to demonize Irish people. I think it's a really important movie. I'm glad that we put it on this week, even if it does have some controversy about the historical accuracy. I do think I tend to think this in general, that movies, if they're trying to tell you what something felt like or what something looked, in that moment, I believe that there's importance in trying to do that, because that's how people really understand. If you're learning something from a movie experience, it needs to be done that way instead of I'm giving you a history lesson kind
Mhm.
of format. I don't know. Maybe some people don't feel that way. That's how I feel. Like, I think the documentary has its place, and there's plenty of books for me to look up this knowledge, to learn the actual facts if I'm inspired to know more. And I think this kind of movie really does inspire people to want to know more. And I immediately started looking up after I watched the movie. And I hope that, now we have more access to do that. And if more people watch it now, maybe more people will learn about these kinds of stories, because, it's easy to just go to a St. Patrick's Day parade, and Irish is great. We love Ireland, without knowing
Yeah.
anything about the place.
Kiss
So
me,
let's.
I'm Irish. Like, no, you're not.
Mm.
You're not. I know you're not. um, so
But
I'm doing
yes,
my Irish soda bread. But yeah, check out In the Name of the Father. Available to rent. Really great movie.
but today we're moving on to.
Luke's favorite, Saoirse Ronan. I know Luke was
Ooh,
trying to
God,
catch
those
her. He said,
eyes.
Saoirse! Yeah, she's definitely known for her beauty, especially those eyes. There was one thing I read. It said like she could either show extreme intensity or um, I forget exactly what it was. It'll pop up in the, I don't know, just showing how much range she can show even in her eyes is the point of it. Yes, Saoirse, I love her.
I know there's just something about her right away. What was the
Saoirse!
first movie that I think that you saw her in?
A lot of people, as well as myself, were introduced to her with Atonement. That was really her. She'd been acting before that, but that was certainly her big breakthrough role. It is pronounced Saoirse. It took me years to know how to pronounce her name. Like I never. It was the thing where it's like I'm not even going to attempt that. Okay, like there's like too many vowels together. I don't know.
Well,
And it
it's when
wasn't.
you had to wait to hear someone else say it, and they're like
Yeah,
Saoirse Ronan, and I'm
I
like, oh,
started
that's
hearing
how
it
you say it.
she would be on
Well,
like red carpet
I'm
events, and then I would hear
yeah.
how they
I'm
pronounce
also one of the people when I read Harry Potter for the first time because I never heard this name. I never read it. I'd only heard it said. So when you see Hermione, it was like Hermione,
See, Hermione, I got.
Hermione.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, and then I listened to the audiobook and like Hermione, and I'm like, oh. So that's how you say that. I'm like, oh, okay, like Hermione Gingold, the actor. I had never seen it spelled out, so I'm terrible at sometimes pronouncing names from spelling. So I definitely also had to wait to hear them say it to know exactly how it was said.
Speaking of Harry Potter, apparently she auditioned for Luna Lovegood.
Oh, I mean, I like the actress they chose for Luna, but it would have been great to see Saoirse in that world too.
Yeah.
I just love her presence.
So Saoirse Saoirse Una Ronan was born April 12th, 1994 in the Bronx in New York City to Irish parents who were kind of struggling, weren't really doing very well financially in New York. So when Saoirse was 3, they moved back to Ireland. So she was pretty much, so technically born in the US, but raised in Ireland, still lives there, I think. She certainly identifies with being Irish. She made her screen debut in 2003. She was in a primetime medical drama called The Clinic, and then was in a little mini series called Proof. She was in a few other little films, but it really wasn't until Atonement, which came out in 2007. She was only 12 years old. That was a huge success. That was another like Oscar favorite that year. That was nominated for a whole bunch of things. I certainly love that movie, and she, got nominated for Best Supporting Actress right off the bat.
At 12, the Academy does like they love performances like that from a young actor. They can show a maturity beyond the youthfulness of their look. Like Anna Paquin won for The Piano, and she was, I think, I can't remember if she's actually still the youngest winner, but it's like when you get
isn't so bad with names. One for Paper Moon. Isn't she the youngest?
Oscar winner Tatum O'Neal.
Tatum O'Neal. Jesus, yes. I think she's the
because
youngest.
she was like 9. Chain smoking will get you an Oscar if you're 9 years old. Saoirse did not have to do that to get her Oscar nom. She did not win, but the Oscars do like those like phenom performances from young actresses when they come up, and instantly this actress like set herself apart with that movie, and instantly put herself into like I said, once you get an Oscar nomination, you are always considered eligible for an Oscar almost no matter what you do. If you get good reviews and they just really liked you that year for whatever reason, you'll get an Oscar nomination for a crappy movie. She doesn't have that problem. She usually gets nominated. She's been nominated only for exceptional performances from what I've heard, including this film.
Yeah, she also ever since Atonement, she's had a really consistent career. Even if she's been in movies that didn't do that well, her performance has always been praised, no matter what the role is. She also started. So another big film she did after Atonement was Lovely Bones, the Peter Jackson film, which if anyone has watched that, that has kind of interesting subject matter, and certainly for someone who's a young teen, I think her parents were a little concerned about, if anyone knows the story of that, her character gets raped and murdered, and it's a good movie. Um, yeah, but they talked to Peter Jackson, and he was talking about how he was going to film things, and nothing was going to be gratuitous or unnecessary, and so they decided that she should do it. She gives a lot of credit to her parents being with her on set, as especially as a teenager, just kind of making sure that she was always in a safe environment. In fact, the first film that she was a part of that that her parents weren't on set for was the Grand Budapest Hotel.
Really?
Yeah. So at that point,
I love her in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah, but she's just had like these consistent roles, and starting in 2016, 2018, 2020, she has been nominated for Best Actress. So about every other year. So with that, she should get nominated for something next year. With that,
right? If she's going to be in a movie, it's a good bet that she will be nominated. So, what were all the films that she was nominated for? So we had Atonement for Best Supporting Actress.
The first Best Actress nomination was for Brooklyn, which is the movie that we picked for today. Then it was Lady Bird, which really blew people away, and that was another Oscar favorite.
Loved that movie.
Worked very well with Greta Gerwig, which then her next Best Actress nomination was for Little Women, which we watched back in December. If here's someone saying, yeah, she's the Irish Meryl Streep. Yeah, she's only 26 years old. She's already had 4 Oscar nominations.
And she's almost exclusively in great movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the movies that you listed off, I'm like, I haven't actually seen Brooklyn. I remember like not hearing a whole lot about it until it was nominated. I was like, oh, I guess I should have been paying attention to this movie. And then, I think at the time I was working 3 jobs. So, going to the movie theater was almost never happened. And so this movie was not seen in a theater. And so when we were doing Irish Break and we were trying to figure out who should we talk about, there was a lot of options. I think I was trying to be like, let's do Maureen O'Hara, or, let's do Brenda Fricker, or let's do this person or that person. And then somehow, I don't know how, like, then we're like, wait, isn't Saoirse Ronan Irish?
Oh, yeah.
And we love like every movie she's in. Like, okay, that this is the choice. And this was the movie that we hadn't seen. So I'm really excited to see it. What is the real story of the movie, though? I just remember it vaguely being about Irish American people in New York City, and that's all I got.
Yeah, so Brooklyn is a story that she really related to, especially since her own parents had moved to New York as Irish immigrants and were trying to make it. But this is, I'm not sure if this is necessarily based on one single person's true story. An Irish immigrant lands in 1950s Brooklyn, where she quickly falls into a romance with a local, who I'm assuming is not Irish. When her past catches up with her, however, she must choose between 2 countries and the lives that exist within. This was nominated for 3 Oscars. This was why can't I talk today? This was directed by John Crowley, who is also an Irish director and has done some other Irish films. But this was nominated for Best Actress, Best Picture, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Oh, so maybe it was based on someone's book, whether that was a true story or not. I will always remember there was some SNL joke that Michael Che, I think it was Michael Che. I think I think this is what the context was, but basically they made a joke that's like, okay, here's a movie called Brooklyn, and there's only white people in it.
No. Well, people forget sometimes that, at certain points in history, Irish, there were a lot of people that came from Ireland to the U.S. Same with a lot of Italian people came to the U.S. So there's a lot of those communities in some of the, like a new city of New York. When you go there are neighborhoods where that is like who's lived there forever. I mean, even in San Francisco, the Castro, which is now known as like a mecca for the world's queer population, That was actually an Irish American area that was populated. Like almost everyone who lived there was Irish. That was like their corner of the city, basically. I can't remember exactly how or why things kind of transitioned away from that into becoming, like a safe haven for queer people to be in and express themselves. But a lot of people don't even realize that the Castor was originally, that was like an Irish centric place, neighborhood. And so, at one point there's Spanish Harlem. There's all these areas that are like, this is where this group sort of congregated, where they found it easy to find housing. And maybe there was already some network of other people who had a shop or a restaurant, that they could frequent, so it'll be interesting to see that side of Brooklyn now. I mean, Brooklyn is huge and diverse. And if you've been Brooklyn is enormous and it has everything. So it was just, the first time I went, I was always like, why does Manhattan shit on Brooklyn so much? Like, I don't understand it. Why is it so bad? There's so many awesome things here. But it was because a lot of immigrant and marginalized communities maybe lived there for a while. So it was kind of like, oh, that's where the poor people live. The not poor people live here in Manhattan. Like, I'm not a New Yorker, so any New Yorker, feel free to read me for anything I just said. Like, totally okay with that, because I never grew up there. So I realize how, it's very strong part of your personality if you grew up in that city.
Yeah,
so I will defer to their expertise.
I spent like 2 hours in Brooklyn. Probably not even. That was my whole Brooklyn experience. Yeah, so I'm excited to watch this movie again. I did see it. I probably saw this after the Oscars. I still try and catch up on any movies that were nominated, even if it was after the Oscars, but didn't win anything. But this, as we said, this is her first Best Actress nomination, and she's sure to get many, many more. She's definitely become one of the most sought after actors in the US. I'm trying to see what some of her upcoming projects are here.
Yes.
What does she have coming out? Oh, yeah. Okay. Oh, so we briefly, I think I mentioned this in December when we talked about Kate Winslet, but she had a film that came out in 2020 called Ammonite, where she and Kate Winslet are lovers in like the 1840s or something. So there's that. She will be in The French Dispatch, which is the next Wes Anderson film.
Which should have already come out, but we're still waiting for.
Yeah, it got pushed. And then there's another film she's doing that they're filming right now, and this probably isn't going to come out until next year, but it's called Untitled Murder Mystery for right now. And it's supposed to be like a Hollywood murder that takes place on like an English film set, and this already has this really great cast of Saoirse, obviously, Sam Rockwell, Adrian Brody, and David Oyelowo.
Okay, that is like, she is following a career path that is like straight path to my heart. If you want me to love you forever, you've got to be in a really fancy, awesome murder mystery at some point. Like, somehow you have to be connected to one. It's just something I love. So that makes me incredibly happy.
Someone's mentioning that Cillian Murphy was in. Oh, was he in Ammonite?
Was he in Ammonite? I don't know. Well, I know he was in the movie. You were talking about Breakfast on Pluto earlier, and he was in that because we talked about him on Monday in that movie. We mentioned it previously in the broadcast.
Yeah, I'm just saying if he was in any of these other movies with.
No, I mean that's what he's talking about because we mentioned Breakfast on Pluto.
Benicio is in The French Dispatch as well. Benicio del Toro.
I know. Didn't you see the trailer? Where have you been?
I remember seeing like, okay, this is like every other person that's been in a Wes Anderson movie.
Yes, they're all in there.
I don't remember Benicio. Oh, that makes me happy. I love him so much.
But yes, whoever was asking about Cillian, I believe. Yes, he was. But what other movie? I don't understand.
Yes, which movie are you talking about?
Was also in that movie you just mentioned. We know he was in Breakfast on Pluto because we watched that.
Yeah,
but
as we've discussed many times this week, the Irish acting and film community is
very well connected.
yes.
They're like a big family.
There's a lot of repeats. A lot of people just like, like, oh, you're in this movie, now you're in this movie too, and yeah, same groups working with the same directors. Again, we almost had 3 Neil Jordan films all in 1 week. Brooklyn, unfortunately, it's only available to rent. Sorry about that. We had 2 rentals in a row. We always hope that by the time it comes around, it's been added to a streaming service, but we're going to be renting it too.
We are. There are a couple other movies though later this month that originally were going to be rentals, which now are available on another streaming platform. So
yeah, and I think
it'll even out.
I think the 2 films we have the rest of Irish Week, I think those are available on streaming services. So there's that. But sometimes it's just just pay the money, pay the $4. Thank you. Oh, it's worth it. Thank you.
It is. Truly.
Please, check out Brooklyn. Please check out our Patreon. Put the link in the comments. Check out our merchandising on Redbubble. Just search for either my name or Book Club for Movies, and you will find it. Tomorrow, for Genre Thursday, we are continuing with our fantasy films we are doing every Thursday this month, and tomorrow is a Irish fantasy film, which there were a few things to choose from. Like, okay,
a couple of them that told the same story.
That was something when we were thinking of what genre to do for this month. We thought it's still going to have to fit into Irish Week.
Yeah, so that limited, that did limit some of the choices for, it was like for genres. Because I'm like, well, there's not like, we're covering a lot of other genres with these other films, so, what do we, and plus, I just love fantasy movies. And, one of the stereotypes of Ireland is the mythology and folklore sort of stereotypes of the land. So I'm like, okay, well, let's pick one that was well reviewed. And I remember that I don't think any of us have seen. So we'll find out more about that tomorrow.
We'll talk more about that tomorrow for sure. But thank you guys for watching today. Thank you for all your comments. Hope everyone has a wonderful, fun, and safe St. Patrick's Day. If you are going out drinking, have a designated driver or walk or and social distance. Social distance. Social distancing.
Wear your masks.
Yes, wear your masks. Hope everyone enjoys